unrest, which I know Brandy has talked about on many mediums and fronts, and so yes. So welcome. I think we'll get started. Welcome everyone to another edition of Mummy Mondays. I believe this is the 8th episode. It is the last Monday of 2020. It's been a whirlwind of a year, but I'm glad we've made it. And I am so happy to have my two special guests on this evening or this afternoon. State Rep elect Brandy Fluker Oakley and her lovely mom, Reverend Brenda Fluker. And just a little bit of background. I say state rep elect because she's been campaigning all year and she won November 3rd. So I'm so happy for that. But a little background about me and Brandy. Brandy, we went to the same college, Syracuse University, in the same sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. And she was my profile, actually. And she is from Boston, and actually sought me out when I came. But was I out of college? I'm not even sure. Was I still in college?
No, I think you were out of college because my line sister, Kim, of course.
Kim, yes, Kim. Shout out to Kim.
For our chapter in New York. And I think she met some of your line sisters. And, Kim is just Miss Social Butterfly. Gotta love her. And somehow in the conversation, it came up that they had a line sister in Boston. Kim's like, I got a line sister in Boston. And I don't know how exactly we got connected, but I remember it was an email. Gosh, maybe 10 years ago now.
Yeah, it's like 10 years ago. I think my line sister Rita actually made the actual connection because I think she talked to Kim. And yeah, I think that was more than 10 years ago, Brandy. Wow. We're dating ourselves.
How long ago it was. Like, it was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago, but that's how we met. Brandy sought me out. She came to my house. And yeah, she met my whole family, and like we went out and we talked, and we've kind of had a relationship ever since then. We would just kind of pick up where we left off. And this year especially, we got back in touch because she was running for office, and she wanted me to do some like digital social media services for her. And of course, we did that. We did that thing.
You did that. Thank you.
We definitely did that. And I say we did that because, as I said before, 2020 has just been a crazy year. And especially for, political candidates, you had to do certain things differently that probably you would have never thought you would have had to do. There was more work. There was definitely more. Brandy, you can talk about this a little bit more as I give it over to you. But anyways, that's a little bit of background about me and Brandy. And through doing the Mummy Mondays episodes and seeing just how Brandy kept her mom, Miss Brenda Fluker, so close during the whole campaign run, from the kickoff, taking her to the polls and having her on video and just giving different reactions. That really touched my heart. I mean, I'm close with my mom, but I just think it just was really, really great, just to see the two generations and just to see the wisdom and just to see that mother-daughter relationship. And so I think that it was very, very important for, the community and the people that you serve in the 12th to, know where you come from, and that you have a great lineage of, wise people and wise women around you. And so I really want to give the opportunity to Miss Fluker and you, Big B and Little B. That's what they have up there. So it's Brenda and Brandy. So it's Big B and Little B, which I love. And I just really want to give the floor to you guys to kind of, tell your story, your mummy daughter relationship story, and also your journey through the campaigning together. So that is the intro for today. And so I will pass it over to you guys, whoever kind of wants to give a brief introduction of yourself. I kind of gave a little overview, but whatever you want to say, I'll give it over to you guys.
Lindsey, intro questions are supposed to be softball. I feel like you threw me into the deep end there.
Sorry.
No.
That's how I do.
Well, I will say at my job, we practice land and labor acknowledgments. And so I just want to give a quick labor acknowledgement to one of my really dear friends, Chinadu. He came up with the nickname Big B and Little B. And because of my relationship with my mom, she's kind of like everybody's mom who knows me, right? Like even when I was coming up, friends would go to her for advice similar to me. I talk about my mom. I mentioned in the promo video, she's my everything. And one day I was on the phone with Chinadu and he was like, "How's Big B?" And I was like, and he was like, "Yeah, Big B and Little B." And so it just kind of stuck as a nickname. And I just think that's just so representative of the relationship that my mom and I share, at least from my perspective. I can't wait to hear her vantage point in a little bit. But growing up as a little girl, I felt like, she had her pocketbook and me in tow, right? Like, and it was like, that's how she rolled. And even though I always had a desire to see other parts of the country and other parts of the world, so I did a lot of my formal education outside of Massachusetts. I lived at several other places. This is kind of obsessive, but we'd probably be on the phone like 4 or 5 times a day. It was ridiculous. Like I'd call her, and then when I taught her how to text message, and like different ways that we could stay in communication. And so I really feel like she is such a huge part of my lifeline, and our relationship has not been rosy and perfect by any stretch. Like, let's be clear, of the imagination. But certainly, as I get older and wiser, I recognize how grateful I am to still have my mom here, and I'm trying to like soak up all the nuggets that she tried to teach me when I was younger, and that I was like, I don't care about that. And I'm like, oh, mommy, can you teach me how to sew? I do want to know how to sew now. That I wish I would have learned earlier.
Yes, that's so awesome. I can see the great relationship. I can see that she's your everything, and the other way around. And so I know that Miss Brenda Fluker, she's the mama here, So I really want to give the floor over to you just to talk about, your motherhood journey. And you can say how much ever you want to say, but your motherhood journey, having Brandy, her growing up, her adolescent years, into who she is now as a state rep elect. So how has that been?
First of all, I'm glad you mentioned that I am the mother, because there are some times that I believe she gets it twisted. But becoming a parent was an interesting time. I never expected to be a single parent, but it happened. Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to be both parents so that she would miss the other parent, but that didn't work.
Yeah.
And I just always tried to provide her with everything that she needed, mm-hmm. including my time and attention to pour into her the things that were most important. There were hard days, mm-hmm. But they were all good. And as I look back, Brandy has always been inquisitive and defensive of others. Mm-hmm. And I can see now how that really formed the foundation for where she is now.
Yes, for sure. Can you, if you feel comfortable, can you take us through some of those, that challenging time as, as a mother, whatever, not due to Brandy or anything, but, what was so challenging about, take us to a time that it was challenging as a mom.
Well, I traveled when she was younger, so I had to arrange to have overnight care. So that was challenging to have to leave her with someone else overnight.
Yeah.
But she has she had good people. I found good people and she worked out.
Mm-hmm.
She turned out okay.
she she did.
Other
She
challenges after the corporate piece where I was traveling all the time, I thought I needed to settle down because one time I told her to do something and she said, Miss Mylene said do it this way. And it's like, whoa.
right?
I appreciate the coverage that you're giving me, but I don't think I want her quoting someone else
Right.
Interesting.
in terms of what the values are.
Right.
So I left corporate and went into a financial nosedive, primarily because my income left corporate, but my mindset didn't.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So there was this inner desire to maintain the lifestyle,
Yeah.
even though you couldn't afford the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So we had difficult financial times.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember once I almost lost the house. And then when I decided, well, it wouldn't be the worst thing. At least I don't have to be responsible for repairs if I go to an apartment. But God worked it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And He witnessed all of that, not in terms of want, because I believe all of her needs were taken care of.
For
But
sure.
He noticed the difference and probably the stress that I was under. And that has made her extremely mindful of her finances.
Well, there was a little inside laugh there. So
It's
well,
just that
that,
she phrased
go
it.
ahead.
She
Go
just
ahead.
cracked me up. It's the way she phrased it. My mom is so delicate with her words. I'm ridiculous about my money, Lindsey, and it's because I saw her go through
Mm-hmm.
her financial downturn. I later witnessed my dad go through it, and then when she got back on her feet and was thriving, we had the Great Recession. So it's like I saw her go through it again, and through each of those experiences, I just refused to let. And not that this was my parents' story each time it happened for them. It happened for very different reasons, but I just never ever felt compelled to like keep up with the lifestyle that I couldn't afford or to live beyond my means, or like that's just not, if I can't afford it, I won't do it. Like I won't buy it, I won't cop it. It is what it is. And
Right.
most people know I love to travel. I've always loved to travel. So even in college, I take trips, and my motto in college was ball on a budget. Like we're going to do it. We're going to stay in a nice place, but we're going to have a budget. We're going to save for it. Like this is how much it costs. This is what we're going to do. And I just, you know,
Mm-hmm.
our parents try to teach us so much. I do not remember that story about Miss Marlene. However, she said to do something. I think for me as a child, there are the things that my mom like explicitly told me, and then there are the things that I implicitly observed. And I would certainly say that finances, given some of her experiences and an experience that my dad had as well during the Great Recession, just always put money into perspective for me, and also made sure that it had its rightful place. Because I'm a believer, Lindsey, they say the root of all evil is money, and it's really just that desire and greed. And so I just try to really keep proper perspective of material things. Doesn't mean I don't like them, doesn't mean I don't like nice things, but it's like if I can't afford it, I don't have to prove anything to anyone. Like I'm dope because of who I am on the inside, not because of what I have on the outside. And I'm grateful for that lesson, just because I've seen so many people get caught up in that trap of comparison too. And it's just destructive and painful to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can personally like attest, to, I just think that speaks to your character of just not wanting to be flashy or show off something, you know what I mean? That you don't have, or just trying to like keep up with the Joneses type of thing. And I think that that's the approach that you have even taken into your role as state rep. It's just you're not caring about what everybody is doing, but it's about how you want to show up. And I think that that's great. You're welcome. You're welcome. So if we, and Reverend Brenda Fluker, a little bit in your narration, Brandy, you talked about your relationship with the Lord, your upbringing, your spiritual heritage and upbringing. Can you both kind of touch on that as to how you grew up, like what practices that you are still practicing now, how important your relationship with Christ is, that whole
The whole thing.
That whole thing.
All of that. But Lindsey, she was about to say something.
Sure. I'm sorry, Mama.
Oh, it's gone.
No, was it really gone? You were going to say her running for office and then stop.
Her running for office made me realize that she recognized her responsibility for others.
Yeah.
That was always important, doing for others. So I'm real happy that she chose that.
Yes, me too.
But moving on to the
she's just such a woman of
spiritual part.
A few words. So it's like, oh, you're about to say something, like I want to hear it. Because she's a woman of very few words. And I will answer your question, Lindsey. It's funny you say that, Mommy, because I talk about this in the work setting because most of my employers can't stand me because I try to make them do better and be better. One of the things I share is the fact that one of the things I know my mom taught me that like cements it in my heart and mind is that however you find a place, you're supposed to leave it, or I'm supposed to leave it in better condition than when I found it. And that means whether it's the physical space, that means a work environment, relationships, people, whatever the case may be. And so I took that away from you, Mommy. I learned that lesson if I didn't learn anything else. And I think that also relates to the faith, to be honest. So my mom grew up in rural Alabama in the era of segregation. I remember she would send me down south for Christmas and Thanksgiving we'd go, but also the summers I spent on my grandparents' farm. And that was always just really interesting because I got to spend a lot of time with my extended family, which I loved. We go to like our little small hometown church and Sunday school. And my grandfather, before he passed, would give us, $1 for church and like $1 for the little, it wasn't a corner store because in the middle of a highway, but the store where you could buy candy after church and whatnot. And when my mom talks about her faith, because when my grandma passed when I was 13, she actually died the same day as Tupac. So when the rest of the world mourns Tupac September 13th, 1996, I'm always like, Grandma, because that's the day of her passing. Yeah. That really was probably one of the biggest tests of my faith when I was like, am I Team Jesus? Like, how do we know? And like, I felt like I went through my own exploratory phase then to make sure that's what I believed. And then once I decided, yes, that is what I do believe in moving forward, my mom would just tell stories about the role the church played in terms of community and meeting the needs of community, providing for community, certainly within the civil rights movement. The Black church and particularly the Baptist church had its place. And I think that also kind of propelled me into some of my like social justice roots because I don't view the church as separate from social justice, at least my interpretation of reading of the Bible, which I've done many times. For me, they're kind of one and the same in parallels. And I think because of the fact that we've been in periods where she was making that corporate money to periods where, just trying to make ends meet, I personally really resonate with the verse Paul says, I know what it is to be in plenty and I know what it is to be in want. And I think that also just helps me stay grounded and think about what are the things that really matter on this earth and how can I spend my time and energy focused on those things. And doesn't mean I'm perfect and get it right every time, but it's just kind of like a North Star grounding for me.
Sounds great. And mom, how do you feel your example has, made Brandy who she is today in her faith? She's strong in her faith, and I know that has a lot to do with you. What do you feel like you modeled for her, so that she can, believe and stand on the beliefs that she has today, and so strongly too?
Well, I really have to say that God led this process, because even though I myself accepted Christ at age 8, I went through accepting Christ at age 8 and doing everything in the church until I left for high school and going off to college and exploring the world.
Right. Exactly.
And then, of course, in terms of Brandy, she was able to see me do everything.
Yeah.
That she was at meetings at the church sometimes 2 or 3 evenings a week.
At least.
So she knew the office staff very well.
Yeah.
When Scott Harshbarger was running for Attorney General way back when, I had her out at T Station before she went to school, passing out flyers.
Yep. Yeah.
So when she saw him at a breakfast later, she yelled, "That's Scott Harshbarger!"
That's
She's
awesome.
always been engaged in terms of helping others. When her little friends came by, they needed a meal, they needed advice, I always did the best I could. Nurture them.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's amazing to, feel comfortable to have your friends come over and be like, you can get a word from my mom too, word of advice, a word from the Lord. That's really great. I kind of wanted to go back to just you guys' relationship. When Brandy, you touched on, our relationship always hasn't been peachy cream. Just want to make that clear. You want to touch upon just like the mother and daughter relationships. Like I know, like for some of my friends and associates and people who have growing daughters, especially in that like teen age, preteen age, they're like, girl, and so I know that you guys in your own way, you ladies have had that experience, and so if however you want to tell that story and how it has evolved to what it is now, and kind of give some hope to maybe another mother and daughter who might be going through those same challenging times. So would love to hear that.
Brandy has always had an opinion.
My sister Karen just said that
when she was little, she's always had an opinion. But during those 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, she knew everything.
Oh.
So whatever I said was just not pertinent. I actually had someone who's become her mentor. I'd share with her the values that I wanted Brandy to take in, because if I said it, she was going to rebel and reject it right away. But if it came from someone else, then she would receive it. So Gail served that purpose well.
That's awesome. Shout out to Miss Gail.
I think it's interesting because I feel like my life experience was very much it takes a village. So when my mom was traveling for work, there are like a number of people's house that I would stay at. And my mom is fairly prideful. I don't know if she'd admit that, but like the thought of having to ask someone, to look after me definitely was like outside of her comfort zone. And I share that to say what helped me was knowing that my mom would tell me something, but yes, it's like, you don't listen to your mom, you listen to your aunt, right? So it's like, but then if Gail or some other caring adult in my life would say it, I'd be like, oh, maybe, but I still recognize the original source, even though I wouldn't admit that to her at the time. And I think it just reinforces the need for parents, which I know several parents many of them are quite prideful, to let other people in and to recognize that they don't have to bear the responsibility of rearing their child entirely on their own. Yes, it is the child that was entrusted to you, but also, you know, we're meant to be in community, and it's okay to lean on others and to let them play a role. I think we definitely had some World War III moments in our house because she was going through menopause and I was like at the height of my teenage hormones, and there was like no balancing testosterone in sight. So like it was a lot. It was definitely a lot. But my mom and I are really different people, personality wise. As I got to know my dad better later in life, you know, that whole like nature versus nurture, I was like, oh, this is why I'm so expressive, because my dad is pretty expressive, my mom not so much. And so one of the things she always tried to impress upon me that finally clicked, Lindsey, maybe 12 to 24 months ago. So like this is like a life's journey. She's been trying to have me learn this lesson, but it just clicked in the last year or two, is that, you know, I'm going to say, like, I can't wait, that there so often, because I've had an opinion about everything, I've often thought that my viewpoint was the viewpoint, right? Or that my way was the only way of doing something. And what my mother always tried to impress upon me, and I would like scoff, roll my eyes, like, whatever, old lady, like, no one is listening to you. She always tries to tell me that, like, Brandy, it's not about right or wrong. People are just different. They just like view things differently. They approach it differently. And I think I have finally internalized that. I always cognitively knew that. And working in diversity, equity, and inclusion, I always talk about, you know, our different perspectives shape who we are, you know, and I mean that, but it was different when it came to my like interpersonal relationships. So that's definitely a lesson that I've taken away, which is what I think, knowing that my mom had that framing made her more patient with me. Because I am so expressive and because I am very direct in my communication, I like to just handle things like, let's talk about it, be about it, and then be done with it. Whereas my mom can kind of let things roll off her back like water in a duck, you know? So I think she's been very like understanding of me and my viewpoints. And I think it's also worth mentioning, my mom was my first advocate because I have always had an opinion and I've never been afraid about making my opinions known. I think you remember when we did the kickoff and Matthew Borders was like, Brandy will tell you if you're wrong. It don't matter if you a classmate, the teacher, the principal, she gonna tell you. Right. Like that's just been a part of who I am. And when the world tried to make me fit into its mold, my mom would be my advocate to say, no, I'm not going to let you break her spirit. And then fast forward, she had to deal with my spirit in my teenage years. And I think it was a learning lesson for both of us, but we made it. And I'd say to all the moms out there with teenage daughters, we eventually get over it. Lindsey, I'm sure you can attest to it with your mom as well.
Yes, I think you understand more as you grow too.
Yeah.
You have to give that room for not being like mature enough or, you know, not experiencing enough to really, I guess, like apply and really take in what your mother is saying. And just like you said, it like just click like the past 2 years because because of your own life experiences. So I think being patient is key because it's always there in your head, but you just have to like go through the experiences to actually like apply it. So I totally get it.
It was also a faith building time for me because all I could do was read the Bible and it kept telling me to be patient and to give children the opportunity to grow. So for me, I had to turn to God in order not to be crazy.
Well, what's so interesting to hear her say that, Lindsey, is what she doesn't realize is then I'm watching her read the Bible, right? And so as I got older, it's like, oh, if I'm stressed, I need to go to the Word. Like I'm just opening my Bible, and I'll never forget this. I don't know if you remember this, Mommy. We were driving we were right down in front of Roxbury Crossing. I forget, you either taking me to school or coming from some event at school. I don't remember which it was, but I remember we were right there for Roxbury Crossing. And I wanted to change the radio station because she was like listening to gospel music. Like, my mom is good for having a gospel CD playing in the car. Like that, that's going to be her lane. And I was like, ugh, mommy, why do you listen to gospel all the time? It was like literally my question. And she said, just keep living and then fast forward. I was like, I get it. I get it.
In the car, like, yes. Seriously.
Yeah.
The car is like the best times for some gospel, man. I'm telling you.
Personal praise party.
Seriously. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it's beautiful to see how you guys, you know, have grown and evolved, and you're also learning from each other. And I know the relationship is different now that you're an adult and grown, and, you know, you're about to be, you know, you have all these community members that you're now going to be responsible for, Brandy. So, you know, I know that you're not like a mother in the physical yet, but it's like you've had a great example to show you, you know, serving and for the greater good of others. That's the kind of like the theme that I've gotten from your life, from the campaign, and, you know, your faith in God and Christ. It's all about for the greater good of others, and bringing them along so they can know Christ, and are, you know, through, if it's not us saying, hey, not beating people over the head with the Bible, but through like our words and our actions. And I think that's great. I think that's awesome. Did you guys have any more to say about that before I kind of like move on?
I would just say that she's being very modest on how many days of the week I was at church. I don't know if you remember that scene. I think it's from Kings of Comedy, and I think it's Steve Harvey. It's either Steve Harvey or Cedric the Entertainer. I can't remember which one of them, but they talk about he was in church every day of the week and all the things it was involved in. Okay, that was my life. And, you know, Concord used to be down in the South End. So I feel like I watched the evolution of the South End. Like, New York City pizza is still my jam. And my mom would give me free reign. So I just be walking around the South End, go and get pizza. There used to be a drugstore right there. Was a Braddock drugstore. You could buy some ice cones. There was a 7-Eleven. Like, the South End is like my second home, is basically what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And I remember my mom would have meetings at the church because she did do some legal work for the church. She sat on a couple of committees. But then because of how she grew up in the old school down South church, that was like where my activities were. So I was in the children's choir. I was on the junior usher board. I don't know if I did junior missionary, but I felt like I was at somebody's missionary something at some point in time. So I remember being at church like 5 to 6 out of 7 days per week in the evening time for different meetings. And it's been interesting. I've had this conversation in hair salons over the years because, you know, that's where community tends to talk. And hearing like parents say, you know, when their parents had them in church all the time like that, they hated it, right? Like, oh, I don't want to do it. So now they didn't do that for their child. That was like their way to break the mold. And in hindsight, they're like, oh, I should have had their behind in here, even not for the faith component of it, but just to like have something to do, to give back, to be in service, especially with the evolution of technology over the years. I think I've seen in my friends who have children who are much older, who may not have had that same church all the time upbringing, how we grew up, are like, dang, I wish I did do that more, because now my child just mainly sits in front of the computer or like, you know, is attached to digital devices. So I think it's also interesting, you know, I got this from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, because you're right, Lindsey, I'm not a parent yet, but from your lips to God's ears one day, hopefully it'll happen for me. But I remember the episode where Ashley had transferred out of the private school and had went into public school. And Will was the only one who knew about it. And of course, eventually Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv found out. And, you know, Uncle Phil, may he rest in peace, is like hitting the roof, like, oh my gosh, how could this happen? And Aunt Viv said something that I still remember to this day. And she said, we try so hard to give our children what we didn't have that we forget to give them what we do have. And certainly for her, it's because she and Uncle Phil had went to the public school and they turned out okay, right? He became a judge, yada, yada, yada. But I think there's something, and I see this in my mom sharing her story and with my friends who are parents, that we want to provide the best for our children, and rightfully so, without thinking about the things that shaped us into who we are and how can we also infuse those into what we provide our children. And I would just say this in closing. I had a boss who's also from Boston, Black woman, who observed about me. She said, Brandy, you were such a mama bear. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean?
You are, though. You are.
The way you care for people. And she's like, they could be older than you, younger than you. Like, you are just always about protecting people. And I don't know why that is about me, but I think that's true. My mom described it as my defense of people. Like, I don't know. I just love people. And I just believe that they should thrive. I don't know.
She really loves people.
You do. You can definitely see it, feel it. It's real. And I like everything that's real. So Mama Fluker, you did a good job. Good job. You know, really good job. And no, you said something really that profound that I'm actually going to take into account for my own mothering and parenting too, because you're right. There's things that like we go through and we think about in hindsight, and you're like, oh, I want more for my child, or I don't want them to go through that. And you're like, in hindsight, oh, they kind of really need that. They kind of really need that. So, in different specific ways. So, but that was really profound. And I'm definitely going to, because the way that I grew up, you know, always in the church as well. I mean, we're living in a pandemic now, but I know sometimes some things that I didn't like, as far as, I would guess the routines of like going to church or wearing this or not wearing that. I try to be with Avery like, okay, it's really about your relationship. You know, it's about your relationship, which I know that's great. But I also feel like there are certain practices in the way that I grew up that can be helpful to him when you're thinking about like not just discipline, but keeping yourself disciplined, your body disciplined. He's a boy, so he like moves around a lot. There's just certain things just about being in the church, being quiet, knowing when to speak, when to not speak, how to speak, having respect for your elders. You know, I think there's a certain like foundation with respect for elders that you really learn in the church as well, with that hierarchy. So definitely thank you for that, Brandy. Mama B?
It helps to establish boundaries.
Yes. Yes. That's the word right there. Boundaries. Thank you for that. That was great. Snap snaps on that. I kind of want to for you, Brandy, you know, we're talking to Mama Fluker right now. We've got, you've talked about your dad. You touched on your dad a couple of times. Can you just give a little bit of background on, you know, you didn't have your dad in the home, but what that relationship was like, what it was like, what did you feel like you needed growing up, or what you were fine with, you know, and how it kind of just shaped your womanhood, having a single mom.
Yeah. So, I definitely did want my dad to be in the home. There were definitely times that I like wrote him letters, like come visit me and things of that nature. Sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't. And think in terms of how it shaped my womanhood. My dad and I have a great relationship now. It took a lot of work, and to be perfectly honest, a lot of forgiveness on my part for us to have the relationship that we do. From my perspective as a child, I always felt that when my dad was in a romantic relationship, he would prioritize his romantic relationship over the responsibility of his child, me and some of my siblings as well. At least that was my perspective. And how that shaped my womanhood is when I got older and on the dating scene. And it's like, at first I said I'd never date a man with children, not because I think it's bad, but because I require a fair amount of attention. And I feel like he needs to be taking care of his child because my dad didn't take care of me. So they need to be focused on their child. But then as I evolved, it was like, no, but like parents need to seek out romantic relationships as well. So then my rule was, okay, well, I can date someone who has a child, but they have to be taking care of their child. They can't be absentee in the way that my dad primarily was absentee for me. But he had his moments. Like my dad, one of his gifts is being a teacher, and he definitely taught me how to ride a bike. He definitely taught me how to swim. Like he definitely taught things to me for sure. I think that the pinnacle shift in our relationship, I had graduated college. I was teaching down in Baltimore with a few other girls who also identified as Black, although different parts of the diaspora. And one of them grew up with her father in the house and still had daddy issues. Another one, similar to me, her dad was in and out. Another one never really knew her dad at all. And I remember we had made chicken and waffles at my friend's house. We were just having like a girls' night Friday night after a long week of teaching. And everyone was like, oh, we need to go to therapy to like work out these daddy issues. I was like, I know, right? We do. And that was like, it took me a good 5 years before I finally like went to therapy to work out those daddy issues. And what made me do it was one of my neighbors. He grew up with us, and then he and his family moved to Hyde Park, but we went to the same high school. He had been dating this girl, and he's now married, so I don't know if to this girl or someone else. But he had been dating this girl who it seemed like he was going to marry. And, you know, I had learned of their breakup, and I was like, oh my gosh, so-and-so, what happened? Like, I thought this was the one for you. And I remember he said to me, he said, oh no, she has to work out her daddy issues. And he swore off. He said, I will never date a woman who doesn't have a good relationship with her father. And we were at our other friend's cookout, my neighbor's cookout. And so I'm like, I got the rib in my hand, and I was like, because in my mind, I was like, I don't have a good relationship with my father. I don't want a man to like put me on his not date list, you know, because of that. And I was like, I got to get this right. I should probably text this neighbor and say, I talked about you today. You changed me. But it was from that one interaction with that neighbor that I was like, no, let me like go to therapy. Let me figure out what this is about and work it out. And I'm so grateful that I did, because I'm such a lighter and freer person compared to the like anger, resentment, and bitterness I harbored towards my father. I also need to understand how much we're very, very similar in terms of personality, for better or for worse. There's some strong similarities there. And it also helped me understand my dad and his own social history, which is not pretty to say the least. And that's like putting it mildly, which helped me reset my expectations.
Right.
Understanding that he probably did the best that he could given the environment that he came up with and the things that he faced within his own life as well. So, and that's probably been about 10, 11 years ago now. So I've been grateful for the turn in our relationship as well.
That's awesome. Mama Fluker, how was this for you? I know that it's a different dynamic for you, being that, you know, he was Brandy's dad, you know. So, but, you know, at one point you guys were together in some, you know, type of way. How was this for you? You said in the beginning you didn't expect to be a single mom, which I know that made you work harder, you know, do things that you probably didn't expect to do. Or just it wasn't the ideal situation. So how did you navigate through that?
Well, I made sure that I did not say anything negative about him.
Sure.
I didn't talk about him. And oftentimes she would share things with me, and it was like, really? Because one of the things that I learned that I always taught her is never lie. Whatever you do, don't tell a lie. Even if you do something wrong, don't lie. So when she started to share with me things that he was saying, it was like, where'd that come from? I haven't seen that lived experience. So it was difficult for me to accept the fact that he had in fact been changed.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's some really solid advice, because our words can really shape, our kids. And if you have Brandy right here saying that's true, like she never talked, badly about my dad, and it could be something different right now, that she could say something different. So that is a true testament to your character and wanting the best for your child, and I think when we have these relationships that don't work out and you have kids, that kind of has to be the focal point, like you said in your narration. Having a kid is your number one priority, and they're your number one priority. And so yeah, I think that's great that you were able to, even though I know sometimes it was
Oh, I
you
have
might have been angry inside. Go ahead.
I had moments with my girlfriends.
Okay, got you over some wine, and you're able to, but an adult to adult.
Right.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the a little snapshot into that, Brandy and Miss Fluker. So we're at, I told you guys it was going to go fast. We're about at 4:50 right now. So have about 7 to 9 more minutes. And so I kind of want to switch and have the focal point be, the future, where we're headed, where you're headed, what your plans are, Brandy, as you go, step into this role at the State House. This is the last Monday of 2020. What is some like lasting words that you can give to the audience, and, where you see yourself, what you want to do in the role? And yeah, just take it away. You kind of have full reign right now.
Oh my gosh, Lindsey, I feel like this is, what was it? The Maury moment, the moment with Maury at the end of his crazy show. He tried to leave some imparting wisdom.
Well, I know you have it, so it won't be hard to get from you. So
okay, no pressure. So I think one of the things is when my mom says like she like instilled in me not to lie, that is like hardcore facts. And I think that's why I take great offense when people tell me a lie or keep important information from me, because I always find out. That's number one. Not because I seek it out, just God is so good that whatever's done in darkness comes to light. So I find out. Like I find out. So it's like, just save me the trouble of feeling betrayed. Just tell me, because I'm gonna find out. But I think also, going into politics, there's certainly conception from the public that it's dishonest, that it's dirty, that it lacks transparency, that it lacks inauthenticity. And when I think about the way I intend to lead, it's how I've always led in the past in smaller forums and on smaller stages, with transparency, with direct communication. I am not going to tell people what they want to hear. I will do my best to deliver it in a way that it can be received, but I'm going to be truthful and forthright, because I don't think there's much to be gained by being dishonest. And I certainly believe in karma and reaping what you sow. And so I just want to be able to go to sleep at night with a clear conscience. I know that I am not going to do 100% of what every single person in the 12th Suffolk District wants me to do. That's not an expectation that I can live up to. And I hope it's not anyone's expectation of me in office. What I can say is if I'm with someone on 10 out of 10 issues or 1 out of 10 issues, wherever we agree, wherever there is common ground, then I'm going to work with and partner with that person, organization, or entity. I think for me, having been an advocate prior to stepping in to this role as state rep-elect, there was oftentimes I'd be in meetings or in conversation with people, and they're like, oh, well, your org supports that, so I can't work with you. And I'd say, but we agree on this. Like, there's too much work to be done. And if anything, and Lindsey, we talked about this a little bit before the live officially started, 2020 for a lot of people was a doozy of a year. But there were also bright spots. And I think anyone who's watching this, like, we can all just take a moment to be grateful that we're still here on this earth when we think about the millions of lives that have been lost over this past year, just from this disease alone, not to mention the other ways that people used to pass away before COVID-19 are still very much real and in effect. And certainly with all of the racial justice uprisings, certainly there were many deaths that happened over this summer, but the encapsulating moment was the murder of George Floyd that was witnessed. I think, and I hope and I pray that it was a wake-up call that whatever pride or grievances that you may have had against someone, there's too much work to be done for equity and for justice to hold on to those really insignificant feelings. Like, if there's common ground, I just hope that 2020 was the year where people realized, oh, actually, I probably shouldn't hold on to this because I need to get this done for our children. Or in fact, our seniors need this. Or you know what? Yeah, I actually don't like the fact that you supported that bill or that you voted for that person, but you agree with me on food insecurity. And so when I think about all of the people who need to have access to quality food or to eradicate our food deserts, I'm going to work with you on this. Like, I just hope that in addition to leaving 2020 behind, that everyone leaves behind that which does not serve them well and does not advance the public good. Because I think there's too much ego, too much pride, too much unforgiveness, too much my way or the highway that has really impeded progress in a way that's meaningful and long overdue. And so when I think about how it is that I want to lead, it's with transparency, it's with authenticity. I know that I'm not going to please everybody all of the time, but I know that I will always be willing to listen and to be clear about why I went the way that I did. And I'm always willing to learn more and acquire new information and see where we are able to make progress. And I just hope that the residents of the 12th feel like government has been run a little differently, and that I don't want it to be said of me, like, we only heard from Brandy when she ran for office and now when she's running for re-election. Like, I want to make sure that I'm able to keep in touch with my constituents, to be transparent about what's happening, what I'm trying to fight for, the roadblocks I'm coming up against, and to really thought partner with them on how we can make the solutions that we want to see for our community come true.
Awesome. And I know you do a good job of speaking directly with your community. And I know we can't really gather as much as we could before pre-COVID. But how can people, stay connected with you, if they're not following you, if they live in the 12th, but for somehow they're not following you, they don't know much, how can they stay connected with you?
Yeah, that's something that my team and I are trying to figure out, because I think it's my vision to try to have like a quarterly town hall for residents of the 12th Suffolk District, certainly in person once we're able to do so safely. In the meantime, there's phone numbers so we can have a town hall conversation. There's also still Zoom and other online platforms as well. I also try to be accessible via phone, 857-269-3603. Brandy 617 is my handle across Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. Email, all the ways.
Yeah. There you go. That is how you can stay in touch with Brandy. I did have one more question came to my mind.
Go for it.
Before we close out. This Mummy Mondays was a little different. Usually I have, just one mom. But I'm trying to have different dynamics of, mothering and mother, mother-daughter relationships, mother and son relationships. And throughout this whole conversation, even your mother said you're just like a lover of people, and I know, for the Age Strong community, you feel very strongly about the Age Strong community. One, for your mom, but I don't think it's just for your mom. I think just for your love for people and just to be around wisdom. And so for, younger people growing up, or, young adults, or even adults, what would you say? Why would you recommend, surrounding yourself with the wise, with the Age Strong, with the spiritually wise? Like, why is that something that's really important, especially if you're about to embark on a big decision? Why would you recommend to keep wise company?
I love the Age Strong community, and it's not just because of my mom. She's actually the youngest Age Strong person I hang out with. I call them my old lady crew. We used to do brunch almost every month, but COVID hit. And I would say Age Strong people just tell it like it is. And it doesn't mean that what they say is always right, but it's certainly their truth. And I think there's something that's so refreshing about that, because I think for most people who have not reached that age, they're still trying to present themselves in a way that the world will find acceptable. But when you reach a certain age, it's like, nah, this is who I am. You're going to take it or leave it. This is what and I think it's just refreshing to be around that group. And certainly, I have this one old lady friend. She lives in District, Miss Katie Days, and she and my mom actually have the same birthday, different years, but have the same birthday. And I remember I had went to Miss Katie's house crying over some boy. I don't know who at this point, but it was somebody. I was like, I gotta go talk to Miss Katie, because I'm all heartbroken and in my feelings. And I show up to her door unannounced, which Age Strong community, they're okay with the pop-up visit because they're just so happy to have some company and to stop by. And I was talking to Miss Katie, and I started crying about the situation. And Miss Katie just looked at me and she said, I used to get frazzled like you do, baby. And I was like, what you mean, Miss Katie? She's like, I used to get frazzled by the things that life threw at me. I said, well, how are you not frazzled? Like, what's going on? And she said, well, I just learned that my God always sees me through. And he always works it out better than I can imagine. And something about her saying those words to me, I actually started to make it a prayer request of mine. And my prayer was like, Lord, please don't let me get to a point where I can not be frazzled. Like, I want to have in every situation, like Miss Katie articulated to me, in that moment. And I just think that Age Strong helps me at least see things from a different perspective. Yeah, that is only for my better. And Age Strong community is funny as all outdoors. Like, if you want a good laugh, like a free comedy show, hang out with somebody 65 plus and just sit there and let them talk, and you will get a few laughs out, which is also good for the soul.
You sure will get a laugh, because they're just at the age where it's just like, I don't care what I'm saying, like they're just gonna tell it like it is, not gonna sugarcoat it. And sometimes you need that.
Yeah.
You really do. You really do. So thank you for that, Brandy. And Ms. Fluker, do you have any lasting words you want to say? Even to Brandy for her run in the new year as a state rep for the 12. Do you have anything to?
Well, I think she should pursue lengthening the terms, because having a campaign every 2 years is just a lot.
We were campaigning. Obviously, my mom supported me as best she could while still working full time and having all of her other civic engagements and endeavors that she's working on. And she said, "Oh, you got to do this again in 2 years?" She said, "When will you have time to get anything done?" So just from watching me go through campaigning, my mom is now a fan of extended term and also term limits, because she believes that people should not stay in these positions till death do them part. So it's a both and in her book. And as one of my constituents, I will take that under advisement and see what we can do.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. I feel like I've gotten a deeper and a refreshing understanding of you guys' beautiful relationship. And I'm hoping that the audience and the people in the 12 have gotten a little bit, gotten something from this dialogue as well. I feel like it's just beautiful to see you and your mom through the whole process. And we can't wait to see more, hear more. And yeah, we're just excited. So I thank you guys so much for coming on today.
Thanks for
And
having us, Lindsey.
Thank you.
of course, and closing out the year with Mummy Mondays. So Mummy Mondays was actually born this year in 2020 as well. So it's been a great run, and you guys are closing it out, and so I wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, thank you, Lindsey. Happy New Year to you and to everyone watching this as well.
Definitely. So we're gonna get on out of here, and you guys can watch the replay. You guys can watch the replay on Team Brandy 617. It'll be up there. You can watch it on the Social U Facebook page, and you can also watch it on the Social U Digital website. So catch the replay. Bye, guys.
Bye.